Good morning, this is Granny B. This is the first time in my new kitchen, and I'm not cooking. Today I'm going to be cutting up some comfrey roots. We had some people respond to one of my videos that said they wanted comfrey roots, so I'm going to show you what I do to these comfrey roots. Right now they're in the sink, and I was very surprised when we went over there to cut these that there were still leaves on them, because these usually go dormant during the winter time. But as I'm pulling this one lump apart, I see I've already got a nice root here, and it's got a little growth nodule right there. Can you see it? A little growth nodule with a little green on it. So that one's a good root. We're going to use it as is. Here was a big one, and you can separate these roots over and over again. One thing I had read about comfrey roots in the past was that don't ever go across your comfrey bed with a rototiller, because everywhere that rototiller cuts a comfrey, it's going to come up comfrey. I'm saving the dirt for my compost pile here. There's a nice root. You can tell by the inside that it's alive and it will reproduce. There's another root. Again, you can hear that crackle, you know it's good. Here's one I'm going to send to somebody. It's a whole root. It's got a growth nodule, and it's got where the leaf was still on there. So off of this one root, we're going to get new roots so that someone can enjoy comfrey at their home. It's been raining a lot this year, so this is very wet. There's another growth nodule coming out. Here's where a leaf had been. Here's another growth nodule coming out. When it comes right up to the ground level and has green in it, that's called a crown. So someone's going to get a nice crown today. Here are two of the crowns. See how that looks? You've got root coming out here, root coming out here, a new growth spurt here. Root. All these are roots and a little growth spurt coming out here. So that's crowns. Looks like I'm going to have enough crowns to send everybody a crown today. So here's a nice crown. You could even cut this right here and plant this, and you could have two plants, because it only takes about a 3-inch section of root to produce another plant. Okay, I've finished breaking up those two comfrey plants that I dug up, and let's just count the yield here. I've got 1, 2, I got 7 nice crowns, and then I've got 8, 9, 10, 16, 17, 18. This is the potential for 18 new plants, and then you could even go smaller on here. But anyway, that will give me some nice crowns to send to people. Comfrey is wonderful in your compost pit. Comfrey is good for every kind of animal. They all love it. We're going to plant some in the backyard where we have deer coming through now. We laughed and told our realtor that we were going to sue him, because he promised that we would have deer and wild turkeys come through our backyard, and we've been here a couple of months now and hadn't seen any until the other night. My husband went out to get something, and as he just checked the backyard, as anyone would, his flashlight picked up luminescent deer eyes, and we counted. There were at least 6. So the next night we went out and we saw at least 5 of them again. So we do have deer, and we're going to plant some of this comfrey around for those deer.
And the realtor's safe.
And our realtor is safe now, and I posted it on Facebook, and I said, okay, you got out of a lawsuit, and he said, whew, thank goodness I can go to sleep now. He's a good friend too. Being a root, it will have its life force is stored inside that tuber, so it won't go bad for a while. But just to make sure that it arrives at your place safely, I'm going to wrap some of these pieces up in a wet paper towel and put him in a Ziploc bag and put him in the envelopes, in a padded envelope. So we've got several of those to send out today. What is comfrey good for? It's good for everything. In fact, one lady that I read said if she only could have one herb on her property, it would be comfrey. Comfrey had been known even back in the days of Socrates as bone knit, because when you take the leaves and you pound them up, then you spread it on a broken bone and it helps heal that bone faster. And in fact, if they used a piece of cloth or something with that, then it almost made like a plaster cast. And so that's one good thing for it. They say it's good for everything. I have a personal testimony of one time when my dad showed me a spot that was hurting him on his back, right about here, under his shoulder blade. And I looked at it and I said, well, Dad, it looks to me like you've got a boil coming up, and you know how painful a boil can be. And sometimes it'll take a week for it to get ripe and before you can do anything with it or go to the doctor with it. And so you're in pain all that time. Well, I had heard about comfrey being especially good for poultices, so I went out and I got a few big nice leaves and I came and put them on my cutting block and I chopped it up really fine, and I scooped all of that pulp up and put it in a little jar kind of like this with some olive oil and left it in there, and I used it right away. It's better if you can let it set at least 24 hours to let some of that oil come out. But because my dad was already hurting, then I took that comfrey poultice of comfrey root and olive oil, and I put it on a gauze pad, just a little gauze pad like you get at the drugstore, and I put a dab of that comfrey on there and put it up against his boil, and I taped it. I put some plastic wrap over it so it wouldn't leak out and get all over his clothes, and then I put tape on it. But then I checked it in about 4 hours, and it had begun to form a white ring inside there. The next morning we got up and I checked it again, and that white ring had formed into the head that you want a boil to come to. So at that point, and so if a boil is right here, you want to start a good 4 inches away. And I just kind of milked that boil to where it wouldn't hurt him. But I milked it. And about every 3 or 4 hours I would go in and I would press a little more. And every time I pulled it off, the head was forming better and better. And so we did that all the second day. And then on the third morning, whenever I pulled the bandage off, it had formed that white head already. And so I did that again, my 4-inch span. And when I pushed on it that time, it just all came right out. In fact, it was so full, it was running down his back, and I had to, to get a Kleenex and clean and stop it. So from the moment my dad felt that boil, within 3 days it had come to a head and ripened to the point where I was able to drain it completely, and I kept putting the compress on it, and that boil from start to finish was like 5 or 6 days, and never had to take him to the doctor, and it healed up great. So I have a personal experience on that. But comfrey is just good for everything. Living Traditions Homestead has a wonderful video on it, and so go watch that and just sit by your mailbox because you're going to get a present. So hope you stay with me, and I thank you again.